And we're live streaming.
Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Shelburne's Public Information Center. The first portion tonight is for our Class CEA for our water pollution control plant. We tonight have Ian Callum from SBA as well as Terrence Gold. If there are any questions from Steve Burnett and Associates, as well as Steve Weaver from GSP Group. So I'll turn it over to you, Ian, and you can run us through what we've learned through the EA process.
All right, thanks very much, Jim. Like Jim was saying, today is the third Public Information Center on the EA for the water pollution control plant in the town of Shelburne. I'm just get my screen shared here. And as indicated on this slide here, in terms of where we are in the process, we've had two public information centers to date, and we've evaluated the design alternatives, the different ways that we could address the solution of there not being sufficient capacity in the existing water pollution control plant. That's the topic that we presented at the last open house in terms of coming to a preferred alternative in terms of upgrading the existing plant as the preferred option. And then we've gone away since then and looked at different design possibilities around how we could design that upgrade to the water pollution control plant. So you can see on the slide where we're at tonight is at our third public information center. And the intent here is to take feedback from anyone tonight or follow-up questions from this presentation tonight, and then to go away and incorporate that feedback into the EA and complete the EA document at that point and file the notice of completion to end the Class EA process for this project. In terms of the alternative design steps, the first thing we looked at doing was establish design criteria for the water pollution control plant. We established an environmental baseline in terms of what's there right now in terms of environmental features in, around, and at the effluent point and downstream from where the effluent discharges into the Besley drain and eventually joins up with the Boyne River. We compared alternative designs using relevant criteria such as cost, redundancy, reliability, maintenance requirements, and ease of operation. And then from there, we selected a design alternative for each part of the treatment process that occurs within the water pollution control plant. So for the design criteria that we looked at, based on current projections, the town of Shelburne is looking at a population in 2041 of estimated at 15,000. We used a wastewater flow basis, our estimation based on historical data of 340 liters per person per day. And that worked out to us needing an average daily flow at the future water pollution control plant of 5,100 cubic meters per day. And we used a max day factor on top of that of 2.5. Maximum daily flow of 12,750 cubic meters. And there needed to also be some equalization storage for high precipitation events. And for that, we used the design criteria of 2,550 cubic meters. So this map here just shows us where in the town of Shelburne the existing water pollution control plant is located. And in terms of the preferred design that that we've come up with based on our engineering and like a weighted analysis that we undertook. These are the sorts of the different parts of the process and the key upgrades that we're looking at moving forward with, and the associated capital cost of those upgrades. So you can see the overall cost of all of the upgrades would be $33 million, and would look at upgrading with a new equalization tank, new pumps, building expansion, and some additional upgrades to the headworks. Second, in terms of secondary treatment, we'd be looking at a membrane batch reactor technology, additional UV disinfection system, and some new pumps, thickeners, and upgrades to how solid waste is managed at the facility. On top of that, there's just a number of things that need to be upgraded there that are either due to aging equipment or malfunctions at the plant, and those are the miscellaneous upgrades that are on that line item of our costing. So one of the things we wanted to speak about early is just acknowledging that there have been historic odor issues associated with the water pollution control plant and how it's currently operating. And we wanted to be clear on why that's occurring and to communicate the planned upgrades that we are proposing to deal with those odor issues so that they are significantly reduced from what has historically been occurring. The two primary sources for the occurrence of odors at that plant are undersized primary and secondary sludge digesters. And so we would be proposing with the design upgrade to add sludge thickening before the digesters to reduce the amount of sludge requiring digestion. We'd be looking at constructing new properly sized digesters and also a new biosolids tank. Secondary reason for the source of odors is the current use of ponds to store untreated wastewater during peak flow, those high precipitation events that we spoke of earlier. And the new water pollution control plant upgrades proposes to construct a large equalization tank that would largely replace the use of those ponds. And the second pond would be of the two ponds would be used as just purely to store treated effluent that doesn't quite meet discharge limits, so that it could be stored there and then run back through the treatment plant again. So that would significantly reduce the number of times that the pond, only one of the ponds is used as it is currently used, to probably less than maybe approximately 2 to 3 times a year instead of on a more frequent basis. So a lot of information here on this slide, and this is just sort of a summary. There's 2 pages like this that just walk through the type of analysis that we did in terms of looking at every single sort of step of treatment that occurs in the water pollution control plant, evaluating what needed to be updated, what needed to be upgraded, looked at different options. And for each of these, we did a weighted analysis that I'll explain a little bit later, but this is just meant sort of as a high-level summary here in terms of all the alternatives that we looked at, the preferred alternative that we came up with, and a bit of the rationale at a high level of why that option was selected over the other ones. So you can see similarly here for secondary treatment, tertiary treatment, sludge thickening, digestion, and sludge storage. These are the sorts of options that were considered. And going forward, maybe I'll highlight here, and I know we go into a little bit more detail with it later, but we looked at a big part of the treatment process is that secondary treatment. Currently, there's extended aeration that is used at the facility. And the decision was made to switch that to a newer technology, a newer membrane technology. And the largest driver for that is that it really just gives more reliable effluent limits. And in conversation with the Ministry of the Environment and conservation authorities, effluent limits were set quite low, and this technology was the best fit for meeting those lower limits in terms of effluent concentrations of nitrates and things like that. So then, because that was sort of a big decision point in the process, I am going to explain a little bit about how we came to that decision here in the coming slides. First of all, we looked at a number of different options. One of the types of secondary treatment, sequence batch reactor, was screened out since it basically provides similar effluent quality as the extended aeration option, but comparatively, it's quite a bit more difficult to operate. And for each of the options that we looked at and compared for secondary treatment, we looked at a whole bunch of different factors from a technical, environmental, a social, and a cost criteria. And we weighted each of those categories equally, and then we compared them to come up with an overall preferred option. So like denoted on the last slide, when we were comparing the different options, the green symbols indicated that this would be the preferred option. A yellow symbol here would indicate that it's kind of in the middle, and the red symbol would indicate that it was the least preferred option of the three. So we did compare the current technology of extended air, the membrane technology, and another technology that's a little similar called IFAS. And as you can see here, the MBR technology came out as the preferred option in terms of technical criteria, largely because it rated high in terms of space requirement. It doesn't take up a lot of space, so there's a lot of options for future expansion, which is quite important. And it's also quite easy to construct. The existing aeration tanks at the water pollution control plant can be repurposed to make use of that new technology. In terms of environmental criteria, you can see again, MBR was the preferred from all of the consideration, from the environmental considerations as well as social considerations here in terms of impacts to residents, businesses, and its ability to meet effluent criteria, like I spoke of a little earlier, was the reason it kind of pushed it over the top in terms of the preferred one from the environmental side. In terms of capital cost, operation and maintenance cost, and life cycle costs, we can also see here that not by a lot, but MBR was a slight little bit cheaper than IFAS, also cheaper from a capital cost point of view, but slightly more expensive from an operation and maintenance cost. These are considered to be Class D estimates, and all that means really is that there's still more design work that needs to occur for there to be a really high level of confidence in the cost. So there might be some changes in the cost. Class D cost estimates considered to be within 30% of the final cost. So yeah, that's an important thing to note here in terms of the costs that are provided. So in terms of our overall evaluation for secondary treatment, you can see that MBR scored the highest in all 4 of the categories. And so therefore it was determined to be the best secondary treatment technology moving forward. This slide here shows the conceptual design of what the upgraded facility might look like. It will be going to detailed design, and but this is essentially what the upgrade would look like. You can see in green here, the green area there, which is currently open aeration tanks, there would be a new building put there, and that's where the membrane treatment would be occurring. You can see some new structures like a new equalization tank that would be constructed, shown in purple, and also a new biosolids tank, which would help the undersizing of biosolid storage that's currently an issue. In the large sort of polygons at the top here, you can see that the current pond is considered now more to be an emergency equalization pond, only in those really, really high rainfall events where there's just not enough storage in the new storage tank that we're proposing. And then you can see this polishing pond, which would be used to store treated effluent that maybe doesn't quite meet the required effluent limits and needs to go back through the plant before it can be discharged. Just one of the other things that I wanted to highlight here is that the RV dump currently located at Fiddle Park will now be relocated to the water pollution control plant property. So the service for using this RV dump will be offered at no cost to Shelburne residents and for a fee for visitors. And it's estimated that it will be open from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. Just in case you weren't aware what happens to the water coming out of the water pollution control plant, it is discharged to the Besley drain, shown on one of the blue lines here, where it travels to the north before its confluence with the Boyne River. We did talk about this a little bit earlier in one of the previous open houses. We did a modeling exercise called an assimilative capacity study that was approved by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And that helps us with the increased rate of discharge and volume of discharge that's going to be occurring, the 5,100 cubic meters per day. We had to set new discharge limits for a number of different criteria, such as ammonia, nitrate, phosphorus, and temperature as well. So those limits were set through that modeling exercise and approved by the ministry. So with that, we have both a preferred alternative design, which is to upgrade the current water pollution control plant. We've looked at a number of different ways for all the different processes of what needs to be upgraded, looked at a whole bunch of different options, and then evaluated those from technical, social, environmental criteria and cost criteria to come up with a preferred design. So where that puts us after this public information center is that we'll be finalizing the report early this summer. We would then be posting a notice of completion to say that we're through the EA phase, and assuming that there's no concerns identified by agencies or public during the 30-day review period that occurs after that notice of completion is filed, we'd be looking to proceed into detailed design and tendering. We are also starting a monitoring program in partnership with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority to help understand better a baseline of existing conditions in the Boyne River, so that once we start monitoring, once the new plant upgrades are up and running, we'll have a better baseline to compare and to adapt to any changes that we see going forward. In terms of construction, after the detailed design is completed and tendering has occurred, we'd be looking at construction occurring somewhere between 2024 and 2026. And that construction date would be contingent on the town being able to secure funding for these upgrades. And that is the end of the formal presentation. I'm not sure if anybody is online, if there's any questions, but for anybody who is viewing the live stream or is viewing the presentation, the YouTube presentation in a non-live fashion, I would say that feel free to reach out if you do have any comments to either myself or to somebody from the town who can direct you either to me or to whoever has the best answer for your question. We do welcome your input and are completely available to answer any questions you might have. All right. So seeing as we don't have any live participants in the live session, we will be pausing the live recording now, and we will be resuming at 7:30 to walk through another presentation similar to this one for the Master Servicing Plan Water and Wastewater